that when you look at that conflict, there's kind of an interesting asymmetry between the Southrons and the Yankees, which is that Boston has very, very definitive ideas about how it should govern Richmond and Charleston. But Richmond and Charleston do not have any ideas at all about how Boston should be governed. Their wish for the Yankees is in 1860, they wish the Yankees well. They wish they would go to hell where they belong. They have absolutely no interest in sending them there. And remember that thing earlier about, being accused of doing the things that you're actually not doing but should be doing. Not only do they have no idea of how to govern Boston, Boston is constantly accusing them of wanting to govern Boston. It's constantly accusing them of what, as Civil War buffs, you may know of as the slave power conspiracy. I'm referring to a very famous book by Mr. David Bryan Davis. And, it's this massive conspiracy theory that really justifies, the war. And, in the Yankees' arms, they're defending themselves against the slave power. This is utterly ridiculous. Of course, the South wants nothing more than to govern itself and live free from weird-ass Yankee bullshit. And a lot of this bullshit really, you go back and read it, and you're like, the libs, they don't change. And so... Vince basically, and by the way, if the South had seceded in 1850, it probably would have worked, and they should have seceded in 1850.
I've said that repeatedly.
Do you know who was one of the chief forces of Unionist sentiment in 1850? His name, he was actually probably the leading Southern Unionist.
Guys like
his
Houston,
name,
for sure.
And his name rhymes with Jefferson Davis. And I'm telling you, no, it wasn't the fire eaters who became the leaders of the Confederacy. It was the old Unionists. And so, but not even the fire eaters, not even the most radical Southerners had anything like a plan to govern Boston. To find, there's basically one man in the South, literally one man in the South, who understands the level of radicalism that the South needs to engage upon if it wants to win. And his name is George Fitzhugh. And do you know that name, George Fitzhugh?
Yeah.
And he's kind of like a Confederate Hunter S. Thompson, amazing writer. And and apart from that, these guys were like wild-eyed nutcases, right? Nobody's listening. Jefferson Davis does not have, Fitzhugh in his office, like any more than like Trump or Elon Musk has me in his office, right? And so here's what happens when the war starts. The Confederates are like, no, we're men. We're fighting for our own country. We're fighting just to be left alone. We don't know anything about you Yankees. You have this like free love stuff going on, prohibitionism, the Maine law, all this like crazy spirit rapping, all this crazy northern stuff going on. We just wish to live our lives on our plantations with our servants and our peculiar institution, and we don't wish to cause any problems. And here's the new boundaries of our new republic, and why don't we figure out how to exchange our remaining property because we want a divorce. And the Union is like, actually, fuck you. You're a completely illegal rebellion. We'll conquer you completely. And, which used to be called before the war coercion, which the Yankees swore they would never do. We will conquer you completely and militarily. And this is, of course, what happens. And slowly and bloodily. And so there's this asymmetry where one side is fighting to win, to be everything, and the other side is fighting simply not to lose. And they assume that fighting not to lose will be easier than fighting to win, but in fact it's harder. And this is it's the same trap that Elon faces, honestly. The trap is that actually, no, it's easier to fight to win than to fight not to lose. And if you fight not to lose, you always end up losing. And here's what happens, in a way, the South loses as soon as the war starts, because what happens is there's the first battle of the war, the Battle of Bull Run. And the South is like, we will preserve our ancient liberties. We are fighting. This is 1776 all over again, 1680 all over again. We're actually liberals. We don't believe in like throwing an altar or whatever. We're fighting for freedom, damn it. Right? We're not even right wing. We're not right wing. Why would you call us right wing? We're actually left wing, right? You know, the same bullshit over and over again. They're fucking centrists, whatever. And of course they're right wing. And and the Union Army comes and it crosses the Potomac and it invades the South. And just as the South is predicted, the men of the South, who are real men, despite having only like 3 bullets because they have no industry, rally and they drive the Union scum into the river and like destroy their armies utterly. And they're like, we won. See, Yankees, we proved our point. Come at us again. You guys still there?
Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
And at that moment, in the spring of 1861, there is no organized force between the Confederate Army and Washington. In fact, there is no organized force between the Confederate Army and the North Pole. They can win just by snapping their fingers, and yet they don't. And they don't because they have no clue, because they're basically thinking small. And I like the cut of your jib, my Hobbit friend, but basically, like, you gotta not think small. Because that's the only point
the
that I have
problem with
here.
this is that's not true. Like there were divisions on the other side of the river. And here's the thing: the South doesn't want to conquer the North because of ideological reasons, maybe, but also the South, in a material sense, can't do it. Huge manpower imbalance, huge industrial imbalance.
If there was any moment when they could have done it wasn't when Lee marched into Pennsylvania in 1863. It was in 1861. And the fact is, yeah, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe there was a division or two on the other side of the river, but that was the time to basically go for Boston. And if they had crossed the river themselves, yeah.
Here's the thing: it's not that you're wrong that was the best. That might have been the best chance to win the war. The thing is, they didn't know that at the time. But anyway, that's beyond the point. I agree. I agree with something that you said here. You said the side that wants to win will always beat the side that wants to be left alone. And this is true. Yeah. And this goes back to something you said earlier. The choice between. There is no middle ground between your kids. We're going to trans your kids, and we're going to make your kids. Yeah. We're going to make your kids watch Veggie Tales. You got to pick one or the other. And I know people don't like to hear that because the fantasy that there would be so much.
You got to have a power that's so high.